Your doctor looks at your blood pressure numbers, frowns slightly, and says something like, "Let's keep watching this." Then you get a handout about salt. Then you're back in your car, still not sure what to actually do, wondering why your numbers keep creeping up despite everything you've already tried. Here's what most people in that situation don't know. One of the most well researched natural interventions for blood pressure in the last 20 years has been sitting on grocery store shelves the whole time, costs about $3 a package, and takes 5 minutes to prepare each morning. And it is not a supplement, it is not a powder, it is a tea, a specific tea that has now been evaluated across 26 randomized controlled trials involving nearly 1,800 patients, with results that, in some trials, match the performance of common prescription blood pressure medications. If that sounds too good to be true, stay with me because the science behind this is real, the mechanism is well understood, and there is a very specific way to use it that most people get wrong. And getting it wrong reduces the effect by more than half. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and this exact gap between what the research shows and what your doctor has 7 minutes to explain is why I put together my new guide called the Blood Pressure Protocol. It walks you through a 30-day morning system for managing your numbers, including a step-by-step morning check protocol and printable tracking sheets you can actually bring to your next appointment. The link is in the description below. If you want research-backed health information designed specifically for people over 60, subscribe so you never miss a new video. Now let's get into this drink. What it does, why it works, and exactly how to take it. Because the details matter enormously. The drink is hibiscus tea. The drink. Specifically, it is tea made from the dried calyces of a plant called Hibiscus sabdariffa, the red variety. If you have seen a tea labeled a red zinger or sorrel tea, you have likely encountered it. But here is why this matters far more than most people realize. Hibiscus tea does not lower blood pressure through one mechanism. It works through 3 simultaneous pathways, and understanding those 3 pathways will help you see exactly why it works and why it works quickly for many people. The first mechanism is ACE inhibition. ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. If you're on blood pressure medication, you may recognize that term because ACE inhibitors are one of the most commonly prescribed classes of blood pressure drugs in the country. Medications like lisinopril, enalapril, and ramipril. These drugs block a specific enzyme that produces a compound called angiotensin II, which is essentially a signal in your bloodstream that tells your blood vessels to constrict. When you block that enzyme, the constriction signal weakens, your vessels relax, and pressure drops. Research published in the journal Nutrition Reviews in 2022, examining data from 26 clinical trials, confirmed that 2 specific anthocyanins in hibiscus, compounds called delphinidin 3-sambubioside and cyanidin 3-sambubioside, directly compete with and inhibit ACE activity. The same compounds that make hibiscus tea that deep, ruby red color are the ones working on your blood vessels. That is not a coincidence. It is biochemistry. The second mechanism is nitric oxide release. Your blood vessels are lined with a thin layer of cells called the endothelium. When working properly, these cells release nitric oxide, a molecule that acts as a natural relaxing signal to the vessel wall. Think of it like sending a loosen up message to your arteries. Hibiscus contains quercetin, a flavonoid that stimulates this endothelial release of nitric oxide. A 2022 study published in Frontiers in Pharmacology confirmed that hibiscus hot extract specifically elevated levels of endothelial nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme your vessels use to produce nitric oxide while simultaneously reducing plasma ACE and angiotensin II levels. You are getting 2 pressure-lowering effects working at the same time. The third mechanism is mild diuretic activity. Hibiscus helps the kidneys clear excess sodium and water from the bloodstream, reducing blood volume slightly. Lower blood volume means the heart pumps against less resistance. Less resistance means lower pressure. This diuretic effect is part of why some people notice early changes within the first several days, not just after weeks. So what does the clinical evidence actually show? In 2010, researchers at Tufts University published a trial in the Journal of Nutrition, in which participants drank hibiscus tea daily for 6 weeks. The group consuming real hibiscus tea saw their systolic blood pressure and the top number drop by an average of 7.2 points. Among participants who were pre-hypertensive at the start, the reduction reached nearly 13 points. In 2022, the most comprehensive analysis to date, published in Nutrition Reviews and covering 26 randomized controlled trials and over 1,700 participants, concluded that hibiscus dose-dependently reduced both systolic and diastolic blood pressure compared to placebo, with stronger effects in individuals over 50 and in trials lasting more than 4 weeks. To put those numbers in perspective, a 7 to 10 point drop in systolic pressure is clinically meaningful. Reducing systolic blood pressure by even 5 points is associated with a roughly 7% lower risk of stroke and a 4% lower risk of cardiovascular disease. We are not talking about rounding errors here. We are talking about numbers that make a difference in your long-term health. Now, before I tell you exactly how to prepare it, and this part is critical, let me tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor was 66 years old and had been managing what her doctor called borderline hypertension for about 3 years. She was not yet on medication, but she was close. Her systolic was consistently sitting between 142 and 150. She exercised regularly, ate well, and had cut her salt intake significantly. She felt like she was doing everything right, and her numbers still weren't budging. Her daughter mentioned hibiscus tea. Eleanor tried it for 2 weeks, but the way she was making it, 1 tea bag, boiling water, steeping for 2 minutes, produced almost no noticeable change. When she learned the correct preparation and the right amount to use, she repeated the experiment. After 4 weeks, her systolic had dropped to a consistent range of 128 to 135. Her cardiologist actually asked her what she had changed. What Eleanor got wrong the first time is one of the most common mistakes, and it comes down to 3 factors: the amount of hibiscus, the water temperature, and the steeping time. Here's what the research shows about optimal preparation. Hot water extraction is significantly more effective than cold water at releasing the active compounds. A 2022 comparative study in Frontiers in Pharmacology directly compared hot and cold hibiscus extracts and found the hot extract produced measurably greater reductions in ACE activity and greater increases in endothelial nitric oxide. However, a full rolling boil, water at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, can degrade some of the more delicate organic acids in hibiscus. The sweet spot is water between 175 and 195 degrees Fahrenheit. If you do not have a temperature-controlled kettle, boil your water and let it sit for exactly 90 seconds before pouring. That brings it into the right range. The amount matters too. Most commercial hibiscus tea bags contain a small amount of hibiscus, often blended with other herbs. For a meaningful therapeutic dose, you want 2 heaping teaspoons of dried hibiscus flowers per 12 ounces of water, or 2 dedicated hibiscus tea bags if using packaged bags. Steep for a full 8 to 10 minutes. The tea should be a deep ruby red when done. If it is pale pink, you are underdosing. Comment below right now. Let me know your age and your current systolic reading, the top number. I want to understand what this community is actually dealing with, and those numbers genuinely shape what I cover in future videos. Now, here is something that surprised even me when I first looked at this closely. The timing of when you drink the tea matters for a specific reason that most people never consider. Blood pressure follows a daily rhythm. In most people, it rises sharply in the early morning, usually between 6 and 10 in the morning, triggered largely by a morning surge in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. This morning spike is actually the window when heart attacks and strokes are statistically most likely to occur. For people with existing hypertension, this spike can push numbers significantly higher than their daytime average. Drinking hibiscus tea 30 to 45 minutes before breakfast puts the ACE-inhibiting and vasodilating compounds into your system precisely during this vulnerable morning window. You are essentially blunting the spike before it happens rather than catching up with it hours later. There is one more layer here that most discussions of hibiscus tea completely overlook, and it explains why some people consistently see stronger results than others. Emerging research on the gut microbiome suggests that the bacteria in your digestive tract play a role in how efficiently your body processes anthocyanins. The specific metabolites that anthocyanins break down into, including protocatechuic acid, are actually responsible for a significant portion of the cardiovascular benefit. People with healthier, more diverse gut microbiomes tend to produce more of these metabolites. This is one reason why pairing your morning hibiscus tea with a small serving of yogurt or kefir about 60 minutes after the tea, not at the same time, may amplify the effect. This is not confirmed by large human trials yet, but the mechanistic evidence is compelling enough that it is worth mentioning. Before the protocol, this is the most important thing I will say in this entire video. If you are currently taking blood pressure medication, particularly ACE inhibitors like lisinopril or ARBs like losartan, hibiscus tea will enhance their effect. That is not necessarily a problem, but it means your blood pressure could drop more than expected, and you need to monitor for dizziness, especially when you stand up quickly. Tell your doctor before adding hibiscus tea to your routine. This is not optional advice. If you are on hydrochlorothiazide, a common diuretic blood pressure medication, be aware that hibiscus also has mild diuretic activity, and combining both without monitoring could affect your electrolyte balance. And if you have chronic kidney disease, please consult your doctor first, as hibiscus can affect potassium levels in some individuals. Let me also briefly mention what I have seen in patients who are not on medication, but whose pressure is severely elevated, above 160 systolic. Hibiscus tea is not a substitute for urgent care in that range. If your numbers are consistently that high, this is a complementary strategy, not a replacement for a medical conversation. Comment below if you are currently on blood pressure medication. Just write yes or the name if you know it. I ask because I want to do a follow-up video specifically on what seniors on medication should know about natural interventions. And knowing how many of you are in that situation will help me prioritize it. Here's exactly what to do starting tomorrow. Purchase pure hibiscus subdurifa tea, not a blend. You want a product where hibiscus is the only ingredient. Frontier Co-op and Star West Botanicals both sell pure hibiscus flowers you can find on Amazon. Traditional Medicinals makes a product called hibiscus that is a good option. Look for packaging that is dark or opaque. Hibiscus loses its anthocyanin content when stored in clear plastic bags under light. When you open the package, the dried flowers should smell strongly tart and fruity, almost like cranberries. A faint or dusty smell means the active compounds have degraded and the product is too old. Every morning, measure out 2 heaping teaspoons of dried hibiscus into a 12-ounce mug. Boil water and let it rest for 90 seconds. Then pour over the hibiscus. Steep for 8 to 10 minutes. Do not add sugar. It counteracts the cardiovascular benefit. If the tartness bothers you, a small amount of raw honey is fine. A squeeze of fresh lemon actually enhances anthocyanin absorption slightly, so that is a worthwhile addition. Drink this 30 to 45 minutes before breakfast consistently every single morning. Give this 4 to 6 weeks before making a full assessment. Many people notice a meaningful change within 7 to 14 days due to the acute nitric oxide and diuretic effects. Full benefits build over 4 to 6 weeks of consistent daily use. Track your blood pressure at the same time each morning. Before your tea, so the reading is consistent. Write it down. Use the same arm, the same position, the same time. That data is what will tell you whether this is working for you specifically, and it is the data your doctor will find most valuable at your next visit. Here's the bottom line on all of this. Hibiscus tea is one of the most rigorously studied natural interventions for blood pressure available to you today. 26 randomized controlled trials, nearly 1,800 patients. Reductions that, in multiple studies, have overlapped with first-line medication performance. The science is not preliminary, and this is not folklore. It is a real, accessible, inexpensive tool that most people over 60 have never been told about, because a 7-minute appointment cannot cover everything. So here is how to participate in this community. Comment starting tomorrow if you are going to add hibiscus tea to your morning routine. Comment your current systolic number so we can check back in and see how people are doing in a few weeks. And if you know someone who is struggling with their blood pressure numbers and has run out of ideas, comment sharing, because passing this video along might be the most useful thing you do for them this month. Subscribe so you do not miss next week's video, where I'll be covering 3 surprisingly common medications. Medications millions of seniors are currently taking for completely unrelated conditions that are actually making their blood pressure harder to control. Most people have no idea this is happening, and their doctors often don't connect the dots either. That is next week. I'm Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Your health is worth the extra 5 minutes in the morning.